At Christmas dinner, my son looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "When are you leaving so we can split the 15 million?" The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my own flesh and blood calculate my death like it was just another business transaction. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Margaret, and for 73 years, I've lived in this world believing that love meant sacrifice. That being a good mother, a good wife, a good woman meant giving until there was nothing left. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And it nearly killed me. The morning of that Christmas dinner started like any other December day in my small Manhattan apartment on the Upper West Side. The radiator clanked its familiar tune, and the smell of my morning coffee mixed with the faint scent of the vanilla candle I'd lit to chase away the loneliness. Outside my window, the city buzzed with holiday energy, but inside these four walls, silence had become my most faithful companion. I remember standing in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the pearl necklace my late mother had given me. My reflection showed a woman I barely recognized anymore. When had my shoulders become so hunched? When had my eyes lost their spark? When had I become this fragile version of myself? The invitation to Christmas dinner had arrived 2 weeks earlier. Not a warm phone call from my son David, not a loving text asking what I could bring. Just a formal email that read like a business meeting request: Christmas dinner at our place. 5 p.m. sharp. Don't bring anything. Even then, I should have seen the signs. But hope, that stubborn thing, kept whispering that maybe this time would be different. I spent the entire morning preparing myself, not just physically, but emotionally. I practiced conversations in my head, imagined my son's wife Sarah finally warming up to me, pictured my granddaughter Emma running into my arms. I even allowed myself to dream that my daughter Lisa might show up, that we could finally mend the bridge she'd burned 3 years ago. The taxi ride to their Upper East Side penthouse cost me $43. I remember counting the money twice, my arthritic fingers fumbling with the bills. $43 was almost a week's worth of groceries for me, but I told myself it was worth it. Family was worth it. They were worth it. Standing outside their building, I felt small. The doorman looked at me with that polite indifference reserved for people who clearly don't belong in such places. The marble lobby gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and I caught my reflection in the polished surfaces. I looked out of place, like a black and white photograph in a room full of technicolor. David opened the door wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. His smile was practiced, the kind you give to acquaintances at charity events. "Mother," he said, "not mom, never mom anymore." Right on time. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, and everything was white and gold and perfect. Too perfect. Sarah emerged from the kitchen wearing designer jeans and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Margaret," she said, air-kissing me without actually making contact. "You look tired." Tired. That's what she always said. Never well, never good, never happy to see you. Always tired. Emma, my 14-year-old granddaughter, barely looked up from her phone. "Hi, Grandma," she mumbled, fingers never stopping their frantic typing. I wanted to hug her, to ask about school, to hear about her dreams. Instead, I got a distracted greeting and the top of her head. We sat down to dinner at their enormous dining table. The meal was catered, I could tell. Everything was too perfect, too professional. No love in the seasoning, no family recipes passed down through generations. Just expensive food arranged artfully on expensive plates. The conversation was stilted, full of surface-level pleasantries. David talked about his latest business acquisition, Sarah complained about their housekeeper, Emma remained glued to her phone. I tried to inject some warmth, some real connection, asking about Emma's upcoming school play, sharing a funny story about my neighbor Mrs. Chen. But I could feel it. The tension. The waiting. They were all waiting for something, and I was the only one who didn't know what. That's when David put down his wine glass and looked at me with those cold blue eyes that used to sparkle when he was a little boy. "Mother, we need to discuss your situation." My situation. As if my life, my existence, was a problem to be solved. "Your health isn't getting any better," Sarah added, her voice dripping with false concern. "Living alone at your age, it's not safe." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm fine. Dr. Rodriguez says my blood pressure is under control, and I handle my own groceries just fine." David leaned forward, his expression shifting into what I'd learned to recognize as his business face. "That's not what we're talking about, Mother. We're talking about your assets. Your investments. The money Dad left you. The money. Always the money. My late husband Richard had been successful, yes. Very successful. He'd built a small investment firm that grew into something substantial. When he died 5 years ago, he left me comfortable. $15 million comfortable. Money that was supposed to be my security, my independence, my peace of mind. Instead, it had become a target painted on my back. The 15 million isn't just sitting there doing nothing, I said carefully. It's invested, growing, secured for the future. Whose future? David asked, and there it was. The question that had been building for months, maybe years. I felt the room spin slightly. What do you mean? Sarah reached across the table and patted my hand in that condescending way people do to children. Margaret, let's be realistic. You're 73 years old. You don't need $15 million. You live modestly, your expenses are minimal. That money could be working for the family. For Emma's college, for David's business expansions, for all of us. You want me to give you my inheritance? The words came out smaller than I intended. David's jaw tightened. We want you to be practical, Mother. You won't live forever. And then it happened. The moment that shattered everything I thought I knew about love, about family, about my place in this world. David leaned back in his chair, swirled his wine, and with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather, asked, "When are you leaving so we can split the 15 million?" The fork fell from my hand, clattering against the bone china. Emma looked up from her phone for the first time all evening. Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment, not at the cruelty of the question, but at its directness. "David," Sarah hissed under her breath. But he wasn't finished. "I'm just asking what we're all thinking. It's not like she's using it. It's just sitting there while we struggle with Emma's private school tuition and the mortgage on this place." Struggle. This man who owned 3 luxury cars and had just returned from a month in the French Riviera was talking about struggling. I looked around the table at these people I'd raised, provided for, loved unconditionally. Emma had disappeared back into her phone. Sarah was staring at her wine glass. David was looking at me expectantly, as if he'd asked something perfectly reasonable. "You want me to die?" I whispered. "Don't be dramatic, Mother. I'm asking about estate planning. About being smart with resources." But I heard what he really meant. I heard the calculation in his voice, the impatience in his tone. I heard a man who saw his mother not as a human being, but as an obstacle between him and money. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky. "I think I should go." "Sit down," David commanded. "We're not finished discussing this." For the first time in my adult life, I said no to my son. "Yes, we are." The taxi ride home cost another $43. I sat in the back seat, watching the Christmas lights blur through my tears, feeling something inside me break and shift. Something fundamental. Something that had held me together for decades. When I got home, I sat in my small kitchen and poured myself a glass of the cheap wine I kept for special occasions. This wasn't a celebration, but it was certainly a revelation. I raised my glass to the empty room and made a toast to the woman who had died at that dinner table. The woman who believed that love meant giving everything and asking for nothing in return. She was gone. And I wasn't sure who was going to take her place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my apartment, really looking at it for the first time in years. Every surface told a story of sacrifice. The dining table I'd bought secondhand because I'd sent David money for his first business loan. The patched sofa because Sarah needed help with their down payment. The small television because Emma's dance classes were so expensive. I'd been living like a pauper while sitting on a fortune, and for what? So my family could count down the days until I died? I opened the drawer where I kept Richard's old papers. Bank statements, investment portfolios, insurance policies. All of it carefully organized and maintained. All of it representing a lifetime of hard work and smart decisions. All of it apparently meaningless to everyone but me. Richard had been a good man, a smart man. He'd started with nothing, built an investment firm that specialized in helping middle-class families grow their wealth. He understood the value of a dollar because he'd earned every one. When he died, he left me not just money, but security. Freedom. The chance to live my final years without worry. But I'd been too guilty to enjoy it. Too programmed to believe that I didn't deserve nice things, that my role was to ensure everyone else's happiness before my own. The next morning, Mrs. Chen from apartment 4B knocked on my door. She was a tiny Chinese woman in her 80s who'd become my closest friend in the building. She took one look at my face and invited herself in for tea. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said in her heavily accented English. I told her everything. About the dinner, about David's question, about the way they'd all looked at me like I was already dead. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her weathered hands wrapped around her teacup. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across my small kitchen table and took my hand in hers. "Margaret," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "In my country, we say that children who only see their parents as banks have forgotten what love means. Your son has forgotten." I started to cry then. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd shed the night before, but deep, ugly sobs that came from somewhere I'd been ignoring for years. Mrs. Chen held my hand and let me cry. When I was finished, she made a phone call. In rapid Cantonese, she spoke to someone for several minutes. Then she hung up and looked at me with determination. My nephew is lawyer. Very good lawyer. You go see him tomorrow. Mrs. Chen, I don't need a lawyer. I need my family to love me. She shook her head sadly. Child, love is not something you can buy. And family who only want your money are not family at all. That night, David called. Not to apologize, not to check on my feelings. To clarify his position. Mother, I hope you're not being emotional about last night. Sarah thinks maybe I was too direct, but someone has to be practical here. Practical. That word again. David, how much money do you think I need to live on? I don't know. A few thousand a month? You don't do anything expensive. A few thousand a month. For a woman who'd raised him, who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his college, who'd co-signed his first business loan and nearly lost her house when it went bad. And the rest should go to you? To the family. To make sure Emma has opportunities, to make sure we can maintain our lifestyle. Dad would have wanted that. No, I thought. Richard would have wanted me to be happy, to be secure, to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He told me so 100 times. I need to think about this, I said. Think fast, Mother. We've got expenses coming up. He hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I took the subway to Chinatown to meet Mrs. Chen's nephew, Jimmy Liu. His office was small but professional, tucked between a dim sum restaurant and a shop selling herbal remedies. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Chen told me about your situation, he said as we sat down. I'm very sorry your family is treating you this way. I found myself telling him everything. Not just about Christmas dinner, but about years of subtle manipulation. The guilt trips when I didn't give them money. The way they'd disappear for months when I had nothing to offer. The emergency loans that became permanent gifts. The way David had gradually taken control of more and more of my financial decisions, always claiming he was protecting me. Jimmy took notes as I talked, asking occasional questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me. Mrs. Patterson, how much of your own money have you actually spent on yourself in the past 5 years? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know. Not much. Rough estimate. Out of $15 million, how much went to David and his family? The number, when I calculated it, made me sick. Over $2 million. Private school tuition for Emma. The down payment on their penthouse. David's business investments. Sarah's jewelry. Their vacations. Their cars. $2 million, and they still wanted more. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to understand something. This is financial abuse. What your son is doing to you is a form of elder abuse. The pressure, the manipulation, the demands, it's not normal, and it's not legal. Financial abuse. I'd never heard the term before, but it fit like a glove. Jimmy explained my options. I could cut off their access to my accounts immediately. I could change my will. I could pursue legal action if they'd taken money without permission. I could protect myself. But they're my family, I protested. Family doesn't treat family this way, he said gently. I left his office with a folder full of information and a decision to make. Continue being a human ATM or reclaim my life. That evening, Sarah called. Her voice was honey sweet, the way it got when she wanted something. Margaret, I hope you're not upset about David's comments last night. He's just worried about you, you know. We all are. Worried about me. Right. We were thinking, she continued, maybe it would be easier if you moved somewhere smaller. More manageable. There's a lovely assisted living facility in Queens. Very affordable. You could sell your apartment and use that money, and then maybe set up a trust for Emma's future. They'd already picked out where to put me. Already figured out how to get their hands on my apartment too. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. The waiting list for good places fills up quickly. After she hung up, I sat in my living room looking at the photos on my mantle. David as a baby, chubby and smiling. David graduating from college, me and Richard beaming with pride. David's wedding, where he'd thanked us in his speech for making his dreams possible. When had he stopped being that grateful young man? When had I become just a checkbook to him? I thought about Richard, about what he'd say if he could see what was happening. He'd built our wealth not just for security, but for dignity. So we could age gracefully, so we could help our children without sacrificing ourselves, so we could leave a legacy of love, not just money. Instead, I'd become a prisoner of my own generosity. That night, I called Jimmy Liu. I want to protect my money, I said. I want to protect myself. The next morning, I went to the bank. I closed the joint accounts I'd foolishly opened with David. I moved my money into new accounts with new passwords. I changed the beneficiaries on my insurance policies. I took back control. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. David called that afternoon, furious. "Mother, what the hell did you do? My card was declined at lunch. I closed our joint accounts." "You can't do that. I have business expenses. Sarah's going shopping for Emma today. Then use your own money." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then, his voice changed. It became cold, calculating, cruel. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this, don't expect us to be there when you need us. Don't expect visits. Don't expect help. Don't expect anything." "I don't," I said quietly. "I haven't expected anything from you for years." He hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen, shaking. Had I just lost my family? Or had I finally found myself? Mrs. Chen came by that evening with homemade soup and wisdom. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "Money given out of guilt is not love. Money taken through pressure is theft." She was right, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier. 3 days later, Emma called. My granddaughter's voice was small, confused. "Grandma? Dad says you're being mean to him. He says you don't want to help our family anymore." My heart broke all over again. They were using Emma now, manipulating a 14-year-old to do their dirty work. "Sweetheart, I love you very much. I love your father too. But love isn't the same thing as giving people money whenever they ask for it. Dad says you have tons of money you don't even use. He says it's selfish to keep it all when we need help." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 3 generations of manipulation. "Emma, do you know how much money your father has asked me for in the past 5 years?" "I don't know." "Some? Over $2 million. She was quiet. Even at 14, she could understand that number. "That's a lot," she said finally. "Yes, it is. And I gave it to him because I love him. But now he wants more. He wants all of it. And he wants me to go live in a home so you all can have everything now instead of waiting." Another long silence. Then, in a very small voice, "He didn't tell me that part." "I know, sweetheart. Adults sometimes don't tell children the whole truth." That conversation haunted me. Emma was innocent in all this, caught between her parents' greed and her grandmother's pain. I couldn't let them poison her mind against me without at least trying to maintain our relationship. I started texting Emma directly, not asking about her parents, just sharing little moments from my day. Photos of interesting clouds, stories about Mrs. Chen's cat, recipes I thought she might like. Sometimes she responded enthusiastically. Sometimes she didn't respond at all. I suspected her parents were monitoring her phone. Meanwhile, the pressure campaign continued. Lisa, my daughter who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, suddenly called. "Mom, David told me about your situation." Situation. There was that word again. "He's worried about you. We all are. Maybe it would be good for you to have less responsibility, less to worry about." This from the daughter who'd blamed me when her husband left her, who'd accused me of never supporting her dreams, who'd screamed at me that I was a terrible mother before cutting me out of her life entirely. Now she was worried about me. "Are you calling because you're concerned about my well-being, or because David promised you a share of my money?" The pause told me everything I needed to know. "That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it?" She hung up too. I was starting to see a pattern. February came, cold and gray. I continued my new routine: morning coffee, afternoon walks in Central Park, evening phone calls with Mrs. Chen. I was learning to enjoy my own company, something I'd never done before. One afternoon, while walking past the Shakespeare Garden, I saw a woman sitting alone on a bench, crying. She was about my age, well-dressed but clearly distressed. Something about her reminded me of myself a few months earlier. I sat down beside her. "Are you all right, dear?" She looked up, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. My son wants me to sell my house. He says I don't need so much space, that the money would be better used for his children's education." "And you don't want to sell?" She shook her head. "I love my house. My husband and I built it ourselves 40 years ago. It's where I raised my children, where I have all my memories. But my son says I'm being selfish." I handed her a tissue from my purse. "Your son," I said carefully, "does he visit you often?" She laughed bitterly. "Only when he wants something." We talked for an hour. Her name was Dorothy, and her story was heartbreakingly familiar. Adult children who saw their aging mother as an asset to be managed rather than a person to be loved. When we parted, I gave her Jimmy Lou's card. "Call him," I said. "You don't have to give away your life to prove your love." That evening, I reflected on our conversation. How many of us were there? How many older women were being pressured, manipulated, guilted into giving away everything we'd worked for? I thought about my mother, who died when I was in my 40s. She'd been tougher than me, less willing to be pushed around. "Margaret," she'd once said, "the day you let someone treat you like a doormat is the day you forget who you are." I'd forgotten who I was. But I was starting to remember. March brought unexpected developments. David's business started having problems. Real problems. I heard about it not from him, but from Sarah, who called in tears. Margaret, I know things have been strained between us, but David's company is in trouble. He might lose everything. The house, the cars, Emma's school. Part of me, the old me, wanted to rush to their rescue. To transfer money immediately, to fix their problems, to be the hero. But I'd learned something important over the past few months. Their financial problems weren't my responsibility to solve. They were adults with expensive tastes and poor money management skills. Bailing them out again would only enable them to continue making bad decisions. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. What is David's plan to address the situation? Sarah was quiet for a moment, probably expecting a different response. His plan? We thought you might help. And if I don't? Then I don't know what we'll do. I felt sad for them, genuinely sad. But I also felt something new, boundaries. Sarah, I've given David over $2 million in the past 5 years. I've helped with every crisis, every opportunity, every expense. At some point, he needs to solve his own problems. But you have $15 million. There it was again. The number they all knew by heart. Yes, I do. It's my security, my independence, my dignity. It's not a family piggy bank. She hung up crying. 2 days later, David showed up at my apartment. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, desperate. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Mom, please. I'll lose everything. Emma will have to change schools. Sarah's talking about leaving me. I need your help. I let him in, made him coffee, listened to his story. The business venture he'd invested everything into had failed. His partners had disappeared. His debts were mounting. He was facing bankruptcy. How much do you need? I asked. His eyes lit up with hope. $3 million would cover everything. The debts, the mortgage, a fresh start. $3 million. On top of the $2 million I'd already given him. And then what? What happens when you make another bad investment? What happens when you face another crisis? He leaned forward, taking my hands in his. Mom, I've learned my lesson. This time will be different. I looked into his eyes and saw not remorse, not gratitude, but desperation mixed with entitlement. He wasn't sorry for how he'd treated me. He was sorry he needed me. No, I said quietly. His face changed instantly. The mask of the loving son slipped away, revealing something ugly underneath. No? Mom, I'm your son. Your only son. When you're dead, that money comes to me anyway. Why can't you help me now when I need it? When I'm dead. There it was again. Because you've never learned to manage money responsibly. Because you've treated me like an ATM for years. Because you asked me when I was going to die so you could split my inheritance. He stood up abruptly, pacing my small living room like a caged animal. That was taken out of context. I was just trying to plan for the future. Whose future? Mine or yours? He stopped pacing and stared at me with eyes full of anger. Fine. If that's your attitude, don't expect me to take care of you when you're old and sick. Don't expect visits. Don't expect anything. I stood up too, feeling stronger than I had in years. David, I'm already old. I'm already alone. You've never taken care of me. You've only taken from me. He headed for the door, then turned back with one final attempt at manipulation. What would Dad think of how you're treating his son? The question hit me like a physical blow. Richard had loved David dearly, had been so proud of him. But I thought about the man I'd married, the man who'd worked so hard to provide security for our family. Your father would think that a 50-year-old man should be able to support himself and his family without bleeding his mother dry. David's face twisted with rage. You'll be sorry. When you're sitting here alone, forgotten, with no one who cares about you, you'll be sorry. After he left, I sat in my chair and wept. Not for the money. Not even for the relationship with my son. I wept for the little boy who used to tell me I was the best mother in the world. I wept for the dreams I'd had about our golden years together. I wept for the family I'd thought we were. But beneath the grief, I felt something else. Relief. I'd finally stopped pretending that money could buy love. I'd stopped enabling behavior that was destroying both of us. I'd chosen my own dignity over their financial convenience. It hurt terribly. But it was the right kind of hurt, the kind that comes from healing, not from festering. Over the next few weeks, I heard through mutual acquaintances that David had sold the penthouse. They'd moved to a smaller apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood. Emma had transferred to public school. Sarah was working part-time at a boutique. Part of me wanted to swoop in and rescue them, to make it all better with my checkbook. But I resisted. They weren't starving. They weren't homeless. They were learning to live within their means, perhaps for the first time in their adult lives. Emma texted me sporadically. Her messages were shorter, less frequent. I suspected her parents had poisoned her against me, but I continued to send her little messages of love and support without expecting responses. One day in April, I was having lunch in a small cafe near Lincoln Center when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned to see Dorothy, the woman I'd met crying in the park. She looked completely different. Her hair was styled, she was wearing a beautiful blue dress, and she was smiling. "Margaret, I wanted to thank you. I called that lawyer you recommended." She sat down at my table, practically glowing with happiness. "I kept my house. More than that, I finally understood that my son's problems with money weren't mine to solve. He's moved back in with his ex-wife, they're working things out, and he's stopped pressuring me to sell." "How do you feel?" I asked. "Free," she said without hesitation. "For the first time in years, I feel free." We talked for over an hour. Dorothy had joined a book club, started volunteering at a local animal shelter, even begun dating a widower she'd met at her church. "I wasted so many years feeling guilty for having the good sense to save money," she said. "Feeling guilty for wanting to enjoy the fruits of my own labor. Never again." As I walked home that afternoon, I realized something important. I wasn't the only one going through this. There were thousands, maybe millions of us, older adults being guilt, pressured, and manipulated by our own families. But there were also solutions. There were lawyers like Jimmy Lou who understood elder financial abuse. There were support groups, resources, ways to protect ourselves while still maintaining loving relationships with family members who deserved our love. The key was learning the difference between love and enabling, between helping and being exploited. That evening, I did something I'd been considering for months. I called Emma directly. "Grandma." Her voice was genuinely happy to hear from me. "I've been wanting to talk to you, but Mom and Dad said you were mad at us." "I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I'm not mad at your parents either. I'm just learning to take better care of myself." We talked for an hour. Really talked. About school, about her friends, about her dreams of becoming a marine biologist. Not once did she ask for money or mention my financial situation. Near the end of our conversation, she said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Grandma, I miss you. I wish things weren't so weird between you and Dad." "I miss you too, Emma. More than you know. Can I come visit you sometime? Just me?" I felt tears welling up. I would love that more than anything in the world. 2 weeks later, Emma came to my apartment for the afternoon. We baked cookies, looked through old photo albums, talked about everything and nothing. She was the same sweet, smart girl she'd always been, just older and more aware of the adult tensions around her. As she was leaving, she hugged me tightly. "Grandma, I love you. Not because of money or anything like that. Just because you're my grandmother." After she left, I sat in my kitchen eating warm cookies and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Maybe my relationship with David and Sarah was damaged beyond repair. Maybe they would never understand that treating your mother like a bank account wasn't love. But Emma was different. Emma saw me as a person, not just a source of money. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Summer arrived with a heat wave that drove most New Yorkers indoors, but I found myself venturing out more than I had in years. I joined a senior walking group that met in Riverside Park every Tuesday and Thursday. I started taking a watercolor painting class at the community center. I even went to a few concerts in the park, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for when I was busy managing everyone else's life. One evening in July, I was sitting on my fire escape enjoying the breeze when my phone rang. It was Lisa, my daughter. We hadn't spoken since her angry call in February. "Mom?" Her voice sounded different. Smaller, somehow. "Hello, Lisa. I wanted to call and apologize. For February. For a lot of things." I was quiet, unsure what to expect. "I've been going to therapy," she continued. "After my divorce, I was so angry at everyone, especially you. I blamed you for things that weren't your fault. And then when David told me about the money situation, I saw an opportunity to, I don't know, get back at you somehow." I felt my chest tighten. "Go on." "It was wrong. The way we've all treated you, it's wrong. You don't owe us your money. You don't owe us anything." For the first time in 3 years, my daughter sounded like the little girl who used to tell me all her secrets. "I miss you, Mom. Not your money. Just you." I started crying right there on the fire escape. "I miss you too, sweetheart." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. About her divorce, about her struggles with depression, about the mistakes we'd both made. It wasn't perfect, 3 years of hurt can't be healed in one conversation, but it was a beginning. "Can I come visit you next week?" she asked as we were hanging up. "I'd like that very much." Lisa's visit was awkward at first. We'd both changed, grown in different directions. But slowly, we began to rediscover each other. She admired the watercolor paintings I'd been working on. I listened as she talked about her new job, her therapy, her plans for the future. As she was leaving, she paused at the door. Mom, about the money. I want you to know that I hope you spend every penny of it on yourself. Travel, enjoy life, do all the things you put off while you were taking care of everyone else. After she left, I realized something profound had happened. I'd gotten my daughter back. Not because I'd given her money, but because I'd stopped allowing money to define our relationship. August brought a surprise. Emma called to ask if she could spend a week with me before school started. David and Sarah were going through a rough patch. Their financial problems had put a strain on their marriage, and Emma wanted to get away from the tension. Having Emma in my apartment for a week was like having sunshine trapped indoors. She helped me with my watercolor paintings, came to my walking group meetings, and charmed all the other senior citizens with her energy and enthusiasm. One evening, as we were making dinner together, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Grandma, why did you stop giving Dad money? I considered how to answer honestly without criticizing her parents. Because I realized that giving someone money every time they ask for it doesn't help them learn to solve their own problems. She nodded thoughtfully. Like when my friend Jessica's parents always do her homework for her, so she never learns to do it herself. Exactly like that. Dad says you don't love us anymore. My heart ached. Emma, I will love your father until the day I die. But love isn't the same thing as giving people money whenever they want it. She was quiet for a moment, stirring the pasta sauce. Then she said something that showed me how much she'd grown up. I think maybe Dad confuses love with money sometimes. Out of the mouths of babes. That week with Emma reminded me of what family relationships could be when they weren't poisoned by financial pressure. We laughed together, cooked together, talked about books and dreams and the future. When she went home, I felt energized rather than drained. September came with its crisp air and changing leaves. I was walking through Central Park one afternoon when I saw a familiar figure on a bench ahead of me. It was David, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. He saw me approaching and stood up, his expression uncertain. Mom. David. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd once been closer than any mother and son should be, now feeling like strangers. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded and sat down on the bench. He sat beside me, leaving space between us. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he said, staring at his hands. About the things I said. I waited. I was wrong. About the money, about treating you like a bank instead of my mother. I felt a flicker of hope, but I'd learned to be cautious. What changed your mind? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Emma. She told me about her week with you. About how happy you seemed, how much fun you had together. She said you never mentioned money once. Why would I mention money to my granddaughter? Because that's all I ever talk to you about anymore. His voice was thick with regret. When did I become someone who only calls his mother when he needs something? I could have been cruel. I could have reminded him of all the times he'd dismissed my feelings, all the ways he'd made me feel worthless. Instead, I chose honesty. I don't know, David. It happened gradually. Maybe after your father died and you started helping me with financial decisions. Maybe when you realized how much money there was. Maybe when life got expensive and I made it easy for you to ask instead of learning to budget. He nodded, tears starting to form in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I reached over and took his hand. I know you are. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to go back to being your son instead of someone who thinks about your money. I squeezed his hand. We start by spending time together without talking about money at all. We start by rebuilding what got lost. Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Just us, no agenda, no discussions about finances. I'd like that very much. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching people walk by, dogs chase squirrels, children play on the playground. It felt peaceful in a way our interactions hadn't felt for years. As we were preparing to leave, David said something that gave me hope. Mom, I want you to know something. I hope you live to be 100 and spend every penny of that money on yourself. You've earned it. You deserve to enjoy it. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. Our first dinner together was stilted, careful. We were both trying so hard not to mention money that we almost forgot how to have a normal conversation. But by our third dinner, we were talking about books, politics, memories from when he was a child. We were remembering how to be mother and son instead of creditor and debtor. October brought my birthday. For the first time in years, I planned my own celebration. I invited Mrs. Chen, Dorothy from the park, my walking group friends, Emma, Lisa, and yes, David and Sarah. It was a small party in my apartment, with grocery store cake and wine from a box. But it was filled with people who cared about me as a person, not as a source of money. David gave me a small gift, a framed photo of the two of us from when he was 5 years old. In the picture, he's hugging my leg and grinning up at the camera. I'm looking down at him with such love in my eyes. I want to be that little boy again, he whispered in my ear as he hugged me. The one who thought his mom was the most important person in the world. You never stopped being that little boy, I whispered back. He just got lost for a while. As I looked around my small living room that evening, filled with laughter and conversation and genuine affection, I realized something important. I was surrounded by family. Not all of them were related to me by blood, but all of them chose to be there because they loved me. Mrs. Chen was telling Emma about growing up in China. Dorothy was showing Lisa photos of her garden. My walking group friends were debating the best route through the park. This was what family really looked like, people who showed up for each other, who cared about each other's well-being, who didn't keep score of favors and gifts. November arrived with an unexpected phone call. It was Jimmy Liu, my lawyer. Mrs. Patterson, I wanted to give you some good news. Remember when we discussed setting up a scholarship fund? The university has approved your proposal. I'd been thinking about this for months. With my financial situation secure and my relationships with my family stable, I wanted to do something meaningful with some of my money. I'd decided to create a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, kids whose parents hadn't had the opportunities that education could provide. They want to name it after you, Jimmy continued. The Margaret Patterson Scholarship for Academic Excellence. Having my name on a scholarship felt strange but wonderful. It was a way to use my money for something lasting, something that would help young people build better lives for themselves. The first recipient was a 19-year-old girl from the Bronx named Maria. She was studying to be a teacher, working 2 part-time jobs to pay for school. When I met her at the scholarship ceremony, she reminded me of myself at that age, determined, hardworking, grateful for every opportunity. Thank you, she said, shaking my hand with tears in her eyes. This scholarship means I can quit one of my jobs and focus on my studies. It means I can achieve my dream of becoming a teacher. Watching her accept that check, seeing the hope and determination in her eyes, I felt more satisfied than I'd felt in years. This was what money should do: create opportunities, open doors, make dreams possible. December approached with its familiar mix of anticipation and anxiety. Christmas was coming again, exactly 1 year after the dinner that had changed everything. Emma called to ask what I wanted for Christmas. Not what I could give or buy or provide, but what I wanted to receive. Time with you, I said. That's all I want. Time with the people I love. She laughed. Grandma, that's not a present. That's just life. But she was wrong. After the year I'd had, time with people who genuinely cared about me was the most precious gift imaginable. Christmas Eve arrived gray and cold. I was making myself a simple dinner when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find David, Sarah, and Emma standing in the hallway with shopping bags and sheepish smiles. We brought dinner, Sarah said, holding up containers from my favorite Chinese restaurant. If you'll have us. I stepped aside to let them in, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the heating in my apartment. We spread the food out on my small dining table and sat down together. For the first time in years, Christmas time felt peaceful. Emma chattered about school and her friends. Sarah asked about my watercolor classes. David told funny stories from his reduced but more manageable work schedule. No one mentioned money. No one asked for anything except more egg rolls and another cup of tea. As they were getting ready to leave, Emma handed me a small wrapped gift. It's from all of us, she said. Inside was a photo album. The first page had a picture from that Christmas dinner 1 year ago. Someone had taken a photo before David asked his terrible question. I looked strained and tired in the picture, trying too hard to smile. The rest of the album was filled with photos from the past few months. Me with Emma during her week-long visit. Me and Lisa having lunch together. Me and David at one of our dinners. Me at my birthday party, surrounded by friends and family. In these pictures, I looked different. Relaxed. Happy. Genuinely content. The last page had a handwritten note from Emma, to Grandma, who taught us that love isn't about money, it's about showing up for each other. I hugged them all goodbye, feeling grateful for the long, difficult journey that had brought us back to each other. After they left, I sat in my living room looking at the photo album and reflecting on the year that had passed. I'd lost a lot: my illusions about unconditional family love, my willingness to be taken advantage of, my fear of being alone. But I'd gained so much more. Self-respect. Genuine relationships. The ability to distinguish between love and manipulation. The confidence to spend my money on things that mattered to me, whether that was helping my granddaughter achieve her dreams or funding scholarships for deserving students. I thought about that terrible Christmas dinner, about David's cruel question and my broken heart. At the time, it had felt like the end of everything. But it had actually been the beginning of a better life. January brought a new year and new possibilities. I started planning a trip to Italy, something I'd always wanted to do but never allowed myself. I enrolled in an Italian language class, joined a travel group for seniors, bought new luggage with money that belonged to me and no one else. Lisa decided to move back to New York, closer to me and Emma. She found a small apartment in Brooklyn and a job with a nonprofit organization. Our relationship continued to heal through regular dinners and long walks together. David's business stabilized at a smaller, more manageable level. He and Sarah were working through their problems in counseling. More importantly, he seemed to be learning the difference between wants and needs, between living comfortably and living beyond his means. Emma started coming to my apartment one afternoon a week to do homework and just spend time together. These visits became the highlight of my week. We would work on her science projects, I would tell her stories about her grandfather, and she would share her dreams about marine biology and saving the oceans. One afternoon in February, as Emma was working on a report about climate change, she looked up from her laptop and asked me a question. "Grandma, do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question surprised me. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "I just think it would be nice if you had someone special to share things with." I considered the question seriously. At 74, I certainly wasn't looking for romance. But companionship, friendship, someone to share experiences with, that had appeal. "I don't know, sweetheart. I'm pretty happy with my life the way it is. But wouldn't it be fun to have someone to travel with? Someone to go to concerts with?" She had a point. My trip to Italy would be more fun with a companion. As if the universe was listening to our conversation, Mrs. Chen called the next day with an invitation. "My book club is having a potluck dinner next week," she said. "You should come. There's someone I want you to meet." The someone turned out to be Harold, a retired professor from Columbia University. He was 76, widowed for 3 years, with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. We spent the evening discussing books, sharing stories about our late spouses, and discovering that we had a surprising amount in common. When he asked if I'd like to have coffee with him the following Tuesday, I found myself saying yes. Harold and I began spending time together regularly. Coffee twice a week, occasional dinners, afternoon walks in the park. He'd traveled extensively and had wonderful stories about places I'd always wanted to visit. He was also dealing with similar issues with his adult children, not financial pressure, but the struggle to maintain independence while aging. "My daughter wants me to move to a retirement community," he told me over coffee one morning. "She says I'm too isolated living alone." I laughed. "Isolated? You have more social activities than most 20-year-olds. That's what I told her. But she worries. We talked about the balance between accepting help from adult children and maintaining autonomy. Harold had found strategies for staying connected with his family while preserving his independence. He included his daughter in some decisions while making it clear that the final choices were his to make. By spring, Harold had become a dear friend. When he suggested we travel to Italy together, separate rooms, separate arrangements, just companions on an adventure, I agreed immediately. Emma was thrilled. "See? I told you it would be nice to have someone to travel with." David was supportive, even helping me plan the itinerary. Lisa thought it was wonderful that I was expanding my social circle. Even Sarah seemed genuinely happy that I was enjoying life. The Italy trip was magical. Harold and I explored Rome, Florence, and Venice together, marveling at art and architecture, trying new foods, laughing at our attempts to speak Italian. It was the first vacation I'd taken in years where I felt completely free to enjoy myself. One evening, as we were having dinner overlooking the Grand Canal in Venice, Harold raised his glass of wine in a toast. "To Margaret," he said, "who taught me that it's never too late to start a new chapter." I clinked my glass against his, feeling grateful for the unexpected friendship that had enriched my life in ways I never could have imagined. When we returned from Italy, I felt like a different person. Confident, adventurous, open to new experiences. Mrs. Chen noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing," she said. "Italy was good for you." It wasn't just Italy, though. It was the realization that my life wasn't winding down, it was opening up. I had adventures ahead of me, relationships to nurture, experiences to savor. Summer brought Emma's 15th birthday. She wanted a small party with her friends, but she also asked if I would take her out for a special grandmother-granddaughter celebration. We went to a fancy restaurant in Manhattan, just the two of us. Emma wore a dress she'd bought with money from her part-time job walking dogs in the neighborhood. I wore the pearl necklace my mother had given me and felt proud to be seen with such a remarkable young woman. Over dinner, Emma talked about her plans for the future. She wanted to study marine biology in college, maybe specialize in coral reef conservation. She was already volunteering at the aquarium and planning to apply for summer programs at marine research stations. "I want to make a difference," she said. "I want to help save the oceans." Looking at her earnest face, her passionate commitment to something bigger than herself, I felt overwhelmed with pride and love. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," I told her. "He always believed in using your talents to make the world better." As we were walking home through Central Park, Emma linked her arm through mine. Grandma, I want you to know something. Even when things were weird between you and Dad, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped wanting to spend time with you. I stopped walking and hugged her tightly. That means everything to me, sweetheart. And I'm really glad you stood up for yourself. I think maybe Dad needed to learn that lesson. At 15, Emma had wisdom that had taken me 73 years to acquire. Fall arrived with its gorgeous colors and crisp air. Harold and I were planning another trip, this time to New England to see the autumn foliage. David had started including me in family decisions again, asking for my advice rather than my money. Lisa and I were closer than we'd been since she was a teenager. But the most meaningful change was internal. I'd learned to value myself, to set boundaries, to distinguish between love and financial obligation. I discovered that being alone wasn't the same thing as being lonely, and that family relationships based on mutual respect were infinitely more satisfying than relationships based on financial dependency. One evening in October, exactly 2 years after that terrible Christmas dinner, I was looking through old photos when I came across a picture of myself from Richard's funeral. I looked devastated, lost, like I didn't know who I was without him. Then I looked in the mirror at the woman I'd become. Still grieving Richard's loss, but no longer defined by it. Still loving my family, but no longer enabling their worst impulses. Still wanting to help others, but doing it in ways that empowered rather than created dependency. I thought about the scholarship recipients who were pursuing their dreams because of the opportunities my money had created. I thought about Dorothy and the other women I'd met who were learning to protect themselves from financial abuse. I thought about Emma, who was growing up with a healthier understanding of the relationship between love and money. Most of all, I thought about myself. At 74, I'd finally learned to put on my own oxygen mask first, to take care of my own needs so I could genuinely help others from a position of strength rather than desperation. The phone rang, interrupting my reflections. It was Emma. Grandma, guess what? I got accepted into the marine biology summer program. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I wanted to tell you first because you taught me to follow my dreams even when other people don't understand them. After we hung up, I sat in my comfortable chair, looking out at the city lights, feeling content in a way I'd never experienced before. I'd learned that love isn't about sacrifice, it's about mutual respect. That family isn't about blood, it's about showing up for each other. That money is a tool for creating opportunities, not a weapon for controlling relationships. Most importantly, I'd learned that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, to start over, to choose relationships that nourish rather than drain you. 3 months later, as I write this, I'm preparing for another adventure with Harold, a cruise through the Greek islands. Emma is thriving in school and planning her future career. David and I have rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of respect rather than financial obligation. Lisa and I talk several times a week and see each other regularly. I still have most of my $15 million. But now I'm using it intentionally, for scholarships, for travel, for experiences that enrich my life and the lives of others. For the first time in my adult life, I'm spending money on myself without guilt, using it to create the dignified, joyful retirement that Richard wanted for me. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family members saw you more as a source of money than as a person worthy of love and respect? Have you ever had to choose between being taken advantage of and standing up for your own dignity? I hope my story helps you understand that it's never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose relationships that honor your worth as a human being. Money can't buy love, but it can certainly reveal who truly loves you and who is just using you. If this story touched your heart, if it helped you see your own situation more clearly, please like this video and subscribe. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better, that their worth isn't measured by what they can provide for others, that genuine love doesn't come with a price tag. Remember, you are worthy of love and respect exactly as you are, not for what you can give others, but for the irreplaceable person you've always been. Today, as I prepare for my Greek islands cruise, I realize that the terrible Christmas dinner that broke my heart actually saved my life. It forced me to choose between being a victim and being victorious. It taught me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to stop enabling their worst behavior. The woman who sat at that dinner table 2 years ago, desperately trying to buy love with money, is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her worth, who demands respect, who gives from abundance rather than desperation. I am Margaret Patterson. I am 74 years old. I am worth $15 million, but more importantly, I am invaluable simply because I exist. I am no longer someone else's bank account. I am my own person, living my own life, making my own choices. And for the first time in my adult life, I am truly, completely, authentically happy. That's the real gift I want to share with you today. Not the story of how I protected my money from greedy relatives, but the story of how I protected my soul from people who had forgotten how to love without conditions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And remember, your story isn't over yet. You can still choose dignity. You can still choose respect. You can still choose yourself. Because you are worth so much more than what you can give to others. You are worth everything, just as you are,